Welcome to the Nerdy Dad Podcast. My name's Levi Bullard, or DM Dadbot on social media, and today we're bringing to you the redemption of Ron Weasley. If you're not aware, Ron Weasley in Harry Potter, at least in the movies, is a doofus. He is an absolute imbecile who essentially can't get anything right. That doesn't matter books 1 through 7. And the problem is that that's not really who Ron is. Ron it may not be an incredibly exceptional wizard, but he's definitely smarter than everybody usually gives him credit for. And that's because they misrepresented him in the movies. There were several key moments that in the movies were given to other characters that in the books was Ron's chance, or certain things that weren't put in that made the situations even worse that Ron was in. Today we're going to cover a couple of those scenarios and how that affected the look on Ron and why it shouldn't have been. In book 1, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione gets caught in the Devil's Snare, it's Ron who reminds Hermione to use magic. He reminds her, "You're a witch!" She's, "Oh yeah!" And then she uses the spell. Before that, she's trying to think of, can I create a fire? Can I rub some sticks together? There's nothing to make a fire here. Hermione, the genius, was completely out of her element and didn't even think that she has magic. Ron was the one who came up with that. But in the movies, Ron's sitting there just freaking out, and Hermione has to tell him, "Calm down," and then she just remembers to use the spell. Number 2 comes as maybe not a redemption, but just shows a little bit of why Ron did it. And it's in the final books, or the final book, where Ron snaps at Harry and tells him that you don't know what it feels like. Your parents are dead. And that's a very rude and mean scenario, mean thing to say in general. But what they didn't point out is that Ron has been listening to that radio and worried sick about his family and his parents, and that is driving him insane. It is making him so irrational, and it's not just the Horcrux. So it's really not justified, but it should not have been that bad. It should have shown what was leading up to it and the signs, because you completely understand why he's worried about his family. 2. When Malfoy calls Hermione a mudblood, Hermione's the one that explains it to Harry. But I have a problem with this because in the books, it's Ron who explains it. Hermione shouldn't have even known what that word was because she was raised in a muggle household where that word would have never been brought around. And like they said, it's not a word usually used in civilized conversation. So when would she have heard it before? Because how they reacted so bad at that, obviously they hadn't heard somebody call Hermione that before. So why did they give that scene over to Hermione to explain? Number 1, when there's a troll in the dungeon or in the bathroom, it's actually Ron who thinks of himself to use swish and flick, your Wingardium Leviosa, when in the movies, Hermione had to remind Ron, swish and flick, before Ron would think to use his magic. And then again, he still was the one who defeated it. Using his magic, it was Ron who defeated the troll. So let's remember that one. When Ron, Harry, and Hermione were captured by Bellatrix at Malfoy Manor, Harry and Ron were sent down to essentially the cells, and Hermione was being tortured by Bellatrix. In the movie, Ron didn't seem to really care at all. He wanted to get out of the cell, but it didn't seem like he cared about Hermione. Now in the books, he's screaming, pounding his fist against the wall. You can actually tell that he is visibly and audibly worried about Hermione. It's just those characteristics that they don't show in Ron. They don't show the good side of him in the movies. Number 3, when Sirius is chasing down Ron, Harry, and Hermione by the Whomping Willow, he's going for Harry. And Ron actually pushes him out of the way. That's why Ron gets caught up. And then in the movies, they just show him go straight after Ron and drag Ron helplessly like a screaming child. I mean, he was a screaming child at that point, but that's not what he did. Ron saved Harry. And then even later on in that one, when Sirius is in his human form and is coming towards him, in the movies, it's Hermione that's, "You'll have to go through us," while Ron's in the back with his hurt leg. While in the books, it's Ron who stands up on his broken leg to confront Sirius and tell him, "You're not going to get Harry." And then the last one we're going to cover today is in the first book, when they're having their very first training with Madame Hooch, and Ron is trying to get his broom to come up. Well, his first try gets him smacked in the face. That doesn't make any sense because that doesn't happen in the books, and two, he's from a family who have been flying and playing Quidditch all their lives. How can he not raise his broom up without getting smacked in the face? It doesn't make sense. So it's just another example why the movies from the books portray Ron as an absolute imbecile, and Ron deserves better. If from these few examples you haven't realized that yet, please go and Google a couple others because there's so many more options. These are just the few that I chose to represent Ron with. And I hope I was able to change your opinion on Ron Weasley just a little bit. Until next time, what Harry Potter topics do you want us to cover next?